All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. Going to be breaking down my Week 5 core plays. Let's go in and get into it. All right, so we're going to start off with the quarterback position. We're going to start out with Justin Fields. Now, he is currently projecting to be extreme chalk, about 40% ownership. If that ends up happening, I will be touching on some pivots and maybe some potential leverage plays that we can be on in the quarterback position during the Week 5 lineup builder video that I'll be doing later on in the week. But for now, let's just talk about Justin Fields and how good of a play on paper he is. So first and foremost, he gets a matchup with the Dallas Cowboys, a team that has just been dominated defensively. And on top of that, Dak Prescott is playing well enough to support the offense for the need for the other team to continue to try to push the football down the field and score points. So it's nice that Dak is playing well to be able to make the other team, in this case the Jets, need to be able to score the football still as well. You can't just run out the clock. Now, it is worth calling out with Justin Fields, he can be a little bit risky. Really, before this awesome run that he made last week, guys, on 4th and 1, just a spectacular play, he was pretty bad, right? I mean, he was pretty bad. And if you look at it, he got a touchdown later in the game as well. That was more of a garbage time TD as well. And so we kind of saw both sides of the Justin Fields experience. Last night, I'm recording this video Tuesday night, so whatever, Monday Night Football, last week, Week 4, where the start of the game, kind of poor, and then he really turned up in the back end of that game. Again, though, this should be a much better matchup for him. He should be able to at least be able to pay off this pretty cheap price tag. And with his rushing upside, he should be able to really crush this price tag. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on into the running back. So we're going to start off with Devon Achane. To me, he is going to be a core play. I do think that with Tyreek Hill being out, that actually is going to benefit him. That should raise his floor a little bit higher, assuming that they're not playing with a massive lead in this game. It's a game that should be close, and so I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. He gets a matchup with the Carolina Panthers, who have given up the 7th most rushing yards to opposing running backs. They actually haven't given up too much production via the air to opposing running backs, but that's okay. He is pretty likely to be chalk. That's kind of a worry there. Like he currently is projecting around 27% ownership. And if that does end up happening as well, we will have some pivots as well from him as well. But overall, looking like a pretty solid play, projected to get 5.4 receptions, about 9 points in the passing game. We'll see if that ends up holding up, but he is someone that I do expect to get a healthy amount of rushing yards and rush attempts in this game because, again, Carolina has been pretty defeatable via the run game that way. So we'll plug in Devon Achane there, and then we're going to move on into another running back that, to me, I am going to be treating as a core play. That being said, Breece Hall becomes much more intriguing to me with Braylon Allen out. He actually still saw a little bit of a workload split, but I am much considering him now as someone I could be on as a core play if the other two players I mentioned become extreme chalk as well. Okay, so the next core play for me is actually going to be Woody Marks. Now, the issue with Woody Marks is he still was in a decent workload split there with Nick Chubb. They're basically splitting the first and second down work that whole game. It was actually in the third down snaps where he actually started to outsnap Nick Chubb, where he took all the work basically from Dare Ogunbowale. And so I think that's what we can expect going forward, where they're just going to probably split series and just split the workload pretty much down the middle on first and second downs. Because again, guys, Nick Chubb has not looked bad. It's tough to give work or take work away from him, but that doesn't mean you can't give some work to another player like Woody Marks. And so I think we're going to continue to see him have that expanded role, especially on third downs, which is going to be huge. And he also gets a very solid matchup here going against the Baltimore Ravens. So, if he ends up gaining around 13 opportunities in this game, then even at this price tag and in this matchup, he should be someone that we're looking at. So from there, we're going to get into someone that probably will be chalk as well, Cam Scatterboo. So he does get a matchup here going against the Saints, who have given up the 8th most points to opposing running backs. So it is seemingly going to be a good matchup, but more importantly, it's going to be a game that should be not a negative game script, which it's just going to mean that he's going to get a lot of opportunities. So last week, he saw 27 opportunities in a game that was surprisingly a positive game script. He ended up seeing 75% of the snaps as well, which to me was very encouraging. Devin Singletary actually saw 25% there, so just those two. And it's just more of a workload play here, guys. Like he has just been, since the time of Tracy Jr., he's just been treated as a workhorse, and we're getting him at a cheap price tag. If he ends up scoring a touchdown, he should be able to 3x pretty easily, but he's someone that should be able to get to around 13 DFS points in this one. Now jumping on into the receivers, that Monday Night Football game with the Cincinnati Bengals was very uninspiring, just like their game 2 weeks ago as well was there. Just across the board. Defensively, their offensive line was terrible. Offensively, just bad across the board. And so the one concern that I have is that maybe this game gets out of hand too fast. And as always, maybe it just ends up being like a Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery game where they're the ones that are being productive. Or maybe Jameson Williams is the one that's having a big game, to the point where St. Brown, the impact that he has in the game, because it's a blowout like right away, is not as substantial as we would want. Now, if the game stays close enough for long enough, he's going to be someone that we should trust to have a big game. And he should have a high floor regardless. It's just that ceiling. Maybe if the game blows out and he's not the biggest reason as to why, maybe he doesn't hit that ceiling that we want him to hit while we are paying up for this premium price tag. But overall, he's pretty darn easy to fit, and he should be a very safe play, as he has been for the last 3 games. Against the Packers, I'm just writing that off to them not being ready to go coming into the season because they did not play their starters throughout the preseason. That's a big thing. I think we're going to see a lot of teams start to do that more, play their players in the preseason. But for week 5 here, guys, we're way past that. He should be a good play for us. Then another player I'm going to treat as a core play. It does seem like Quentin Johnston has kind of taken over as that receiver number 1 for this team. And I actually saw a pretty good comparison online there. Someone was comparing him to Davante Adams, where Davante Adams, if you remember the start of his career, the first 2 careers, and as a Packers fan, I vividly remember this. The talent was there. No one was really down the talent. It was just the drops were so frustrating. And it does, I see the comp there. I actually think that's a very fair comp where Johnston, the talent's always been there. And now he's not really dropping the football too much. And now he's just making these big plays and these spectacular plays, getting a very healthy target share. Like, to have a floor of 7 targets thus far this season is crazy. Now we get another good matchup going against the Washington Commanders. Like, he should be able to go off in this spot again. And you would argue he's just too cheap given the production that he's had. Now, could it be a Keenan Allen game or Ladd McConkey game? Sure, but at the same time, they're still considered GPP plays. We can make those pivots. I think for cash, and again, this sounds crazy, I think Quentin Johnston makes a ton of sense. Now, that being said, I would rather get to Garrett Wilson, who's only going to be $400 more expensive. Again, just chasing that matchup as well. He is someone that has seen 8 or more targets in every game thus far, and he gets that matchup with the Dallas Cowboys, so it's going to be extremely appealing. We can also stack him with Justin Fields. If Justin Fields is going to have a good game, obviously, I think it's going to be partially due to Garrett Wilson also having a good game as well. The Dallas Cowboys haven't seemed to be able to really stop anyone. That being said, the Jets only have really Wilson and Hall, for that matter, but the emergence of Mason Taylor could end up being huge for Wilson, because if Taylor is having a good game and if Breece Hall is playing well, then they might have to shift their defensive attention off of Garrett Wilson, if that makes sense. Where if you look at all the other teams thus far that the Cowboys have played, they've at least had a pretty good receiver number 2 or number 2 pass catching weapon that they had to think about. The Jets really don't have that unless you consider Breece Hall. Okay. And so just trying to paint a picture of where Garrett Wilson maybe doesn't have a big game. Now, that being said, if he doesn't have a big game, Justin Fields can still get there with his rushing upside. And then one of my favorite plays on this slate, especially concerning his price tag, is going to be Michael Pittman Jr. Okay. So first and foremost, he does get a pretty appealing game with the game total being 48 total points. So I like that. Last week, guys, he ended up seeing a 93% snap share, which obviously we like. We also saw him get 10 plus targets. If Alec Pierce is back, maybe that changes the equation a little bit for him, but Josh Downs not playing that many snaps. We actually saw Mitchell play about 80% of the snaps as well, but he kind of made it a dumb play. And will the team trust him? We don't know, but we do know that right now Daniel Jones trusts Michael Pittman, and he gets a phenomenal matchup going against the Las Vegas Raiders. That is a top 3 matchup for opposing receivers. And what's surprising to me is that he's not that high owned as it currently sits. I'm doing this video on Tuesday, so this is going to change. Only 11.5% owned right now, which I expect that number to be higher. If it's not, I'm be very encouraged to play him at that cheap price tag. Again, just being the clear-cut receiver number 1 in an offense that's, going to have a lot of points scored per the Vegas game total. And then let's go ahead and get on into tight end. So I am kind of treating Jake Ferguson as my core play, as a kind of a way to run it back from Justin Fields and Wilson if we end up getting there. But he has had a pretty high target share with CeeDee Lamb getting injured, and Dak just trusts him. The matchup is not actually as appealing as like DraftKings is showing it, guys, just as an FYI, but still a solid matchup. Like, we're not too worried about it. He's the player that I've been getting off of the most in my builds to go elsewhere. but I am still treating him as a core play. I'm still treating him as someone I want to get to first. And that's just due to kind of my strategy. I'd rather pay up for like St. Brown, who I think has a massive ceiling in this game, where if he's going to go off, the point difference is going to be greater than like the next best tight end that I might play, typically speaking. And then I typically do not talk about defense that much, but I do want to mention it here real quick. So it is worth calling out, like, Detroit should be able to feast against the Bengals. We have seen this now. The Bengals O-line is just terrible. Again, I was saying for the Monday Night Showdown site, I just felt bad for Jake Browning. And I will say Jake Browning, that was probably his worst game thus far. And I don't believe he threw a pick, but like that was actually his worst game. But there's nothing much he can do when the O-line is just that bad. So the Detroit Lions defense, who has been better over the last 3 games, should be able to feast against the Bengals. They should get multiple sacks in this game. But I also want to call it the Panthers are going to get a pretty solid matchup going against the Dolphins, who are going to be without Tyreek Hill. Don't love the fact that they just went negative, but they are a solid, very cheap price team that you can play. That's worth calling out as well. The Houston Texans are a team. You guys know my strategy by now with DST. I'm looking for the lowest price DST that's not going to go negative. And we actually get the Texans in a pretty phenomenal spot with Lamar Jackson expected to sit in this game. And so that means it's going to be less likely for Cooper Rush to really go off and have a good game and cause the Texans DST to go negative. So pretty happy to get to them this week. And so to give you guys kind of a second look lineup, because I already did that in the first look, what I'm looking at here is actually Sam Laporta then, who actually gets one of the better matchups going against the Bengals, more of just a shoulder shrug option where I was just closing out my build with him. So it is starting to look like more of a straightforward slate here for week 5. Now, again, I do think we are going to have some pretty interesting pivots to make if that ownership does end up being as high as it is projected to be for like Fields and Devon Achane. We'll have to see what that looks like as the week progresses. Be on the lookout for the lineup builder video, guys. I'll be touching on, some potential fades or pivots in that video. That'll be posted either Friday night or Saturday midday. So be on the lookout for that. If you guys like access to any of the tools available on 9to5sports.com for either props betting or DFS, NFL DFS, PGA DFS, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Get access to all the tools for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. I appreciate you guys being here. Good luck with your week 5 builds, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.